everyone, welcome to another video. Today we're in the Astra VXR. I'm on my way to work again. I've put my foot down on the dual carriageway and I've lost all boost. This light's come on the dash, but when I read the trouble code, my code reader isn't reading anything. Probably need the Vauxhall Tech 2 code reader to get the code out of it. So I'm going to have to guess what the problem is. At this point my best guess is that it's a boost sensor, possibly. I'll do a bit of research. I think it's going to be a bit more trial and error with parts. But what I do know is that when I clear codes with my code reader, the light goes away and the boost comes back on. The car will work normally for a bit. So hopefully that means I can rule out a mechanical fault or anything serious. Another intermittent fault I've got on the car at the moment is periodic engine management light coming on with the code P0420, which is to do with an O2 sensor. So we're going to look at that as well. I'll explain more about that a bit later. So this bad boy here is the boost sensor for the VXR. Easy replacement, 1 bolt. I don't have one yet, so I'm going to look at getting one ordered, but first I'm going to do a little bit of research. Without getting a trouble code from the ECU using the diagnostic machine, it's even harder to identify what the faulty part is than it normally is. As we've seen in my previous videos, even when I've got a trouble code, it's a struggle. So a bit of guesswork. I'm making an assumption, but I will do some further research to see if other people have had the same fault and whether it seems likely that this is the part at fault. Before I get into that, the other faults that I referred to, the engine management light coming on, was triggering the code P0420 as pictured here. So this fault I've been living with for quite a while. Last summer I had some work done because I was getting blue smoke out of the exhaust, which is normally a sign that oil was getting into the engine. That had been going on for quite a while, but it got to the point that it needed to be dealt with, which was last summer. So a common fault in these is the valve stem oil seals getting hard and oil slips down through the valve into the cylinder. My understanding at the time was that to do that job you had to take the cylinder head off, which wasn't something I fancied doing in the garage here. So I took it to a garage that has always done my MOTs for me and asked them to do it. Anyway, as I was living with the blue smoke coming out of the exhaust for quite some time, the engine management light started to come on, and the code that I'm still getting now, the P0420, was being read from the ECU. At the time I thought it was just because oil was burning in the cylinders, so the gases that are going through the exhaust weren't what the O2 sensor was expecting to read. But having had the valve stem oil seals now done, I'm still getting the code. My theory now is that with the excess oil going through the exhaust, all that oil's going onto the O2 sensor and has caused it to fail. Something which is a useful nugget of information though is that you don't have to take the cylinder head off to do the valve stem oil seals, and you can use something like this. So what this does here is allows you to compress the cylinder with air. So you do need a compressor to use this, which means that when you take the camshafts off and take the collets off the valve springs that hold the valves up, the valves do not drop into the cylinder head, which in turn allows you to push down on the valve springs and the valve seats to get the collets back into place and replace the valve stem oil seals without having to take the cylinder head. So that turns a job that could cost in the region of £1,000 into what cost me £700, which is really good value and it fixed the problem. Anyway, so what we're here to do today is the O2 sensor. Got the new one right here. What does an O2 sensor actually do, I hear you ask? So the O2 sensor measures the amount of oxygen that is going through the exhaust after the air and fuel mixture is combusted in the engine, which is what makes the engine turn. The O2 sensor is picking up the amount of oxygen that's going through the exhaust to assess whether the air-fuel mixture is quite right, if there's excess oxygen in the exhaust or if there's not enough oxygen in the exhaust, and it will adjust the air-fuel ratio accordingly, sending messages back to the ECU. So with that in mind, although the only issue or symptom that I've been getting with the O2 sensor being faulty is the engine management light coming on, it is possible that the signals being sent back to the ECU are incorrect, so perhaps my engine is not running as efficiently as it could be. there is the AT sensor. There are actually two AT sensors on the car. This is the bank 1 AT sensor, which comes before the catalytic converter. The other one comes after the catalytic converter, which checks that the cat is running efficiently. And I'm changing the first AT sensor there because the trouble code P0420, the description is that it's the bank 1 AT sensor. It's not too difficult to get out, just a slight turn of the 22mm spanner, and then it's come out by hand. It's probably helped by the fact that the pre-cap was replaced with that decap pipe not too long ago, so it wasn't that long ago that I had to rescrew the AT sensor in. So here's the old one, here's the new one. They do look a bit different. The wires are a bit different in length. Interesting. Done a classic me and ordered off eBay again, so not sure if that difference in look and wire length is relevant. We'll plug it in and we'll soon find out. Okay, so once you tighten up the spanner, you just feed the wire through under the charge pipes here. There's a clip for it to go to in there, and then we just plug in to this one. I'm just going to put the camera down so I can put the wire through that clip. Just going to start the engine now, check that there's no smoke coming out while I screwed the AT sensor in, make sure it's fitted nice and tightly. Looking good in there. Early indications are good that the part is okay because there's no lights on the dash yet. Just plugged in the code reader, and this is the code that is coming up because of the AT sensor issue. I'm just going to clear that, reread the codes, and nothing stored. Looks good. We'll have to see over the next few weeks whether it comes back, because part of the reason I've taken so long to get around to doing this is because previously the car could have gone weeks, maybe a month even, without the light coming on. So it's been so intermittent, it hasn't been high on my list of things to do, but more recently it seems to be getting a bit more frequent. So hopefully by changing our AT sensor now, we fixed it, but we'll have to monitor it and see what happens. Okay, so I've done the AT sensor, given it a drive, it hasn't made any difference, the light's still coming on. Done a bit of research on the internet. I've seen people suggest that the car needs a remap because I've got the sports cat, as seen in the previous video. See the clip. The ECU is now reading from the AT sensor numbers that are outside the parameters within the standard mapping. So part of getting the remap done would be to change those parameters so the light doesn't keep coming on. Anyway, I'm now investigating the boost issue and the limp home issue. Before we move on to the boost problem, I want to show you how to reset the service light, which I forgot to do on the service video for this car, link in the top right corner. So, put the key in, put your foot on the brake. I don't know how I'm going to do this, holding the camera, position the camera there we go, perfect. Right, hold this button in, and whilst your foot on the brake, hold that button in, turn the key so the ignition is on. The inspection lights flash for a while until it stops flashing, at which point you have reset the service light. Now, when I turn the ignition on, I don't get the inspection light. Now we move on to the boost problem. I've done a little bit of research, hasn't been massively conclusive, but somebody did suggest check for leaks in the vacuum piping, so I think that is a good place to start. I've got the bonnet open just to see if I can see anything from the top, and already I have spotted something, which is a good start. So down behind here, under kind of the MAF sensor area, I have spotted this. Wasn't connected to anything. And under the math is this, which is the other end of that. So I'm going to plug that in and see how that goes. I can only assume that that came undone when I was doing the starter motor. It was probably a little bit after I did the starter motor I started getting the issue, and it has been so intermittent. I haven't had it go into limp mode in the last week, so the fact something's completely unplugged, I kind of would have thought it'd be doing it all of the time. But anyway, we'll have to keep an eye on that, do some road tests, keep driving it and see if the issue reoccurs. I mentioned just now that the O2 sensor didn't fix the engine management light coming up, and the answer to that is to get the car mapped. This isn't something I ever thought that I'd be doing. When I bought the car, I had to get the gearbox rebuilt because the pinion bearing had gone and was making a whine consistent with road speed. That was 7 years ago when the car had done 67,000 miles. It's now done 120,000 miles and held up well. I've had the car 7 years. If I get it mapped and it blows up, I feel like I've got my value out of the car. The fact that getting it mapped will cure the problem, or I hope will cure the problem, and also give me a bit more power. Seems like a bit of fun. It's enough of an incentive to get me to go ahead and go for it. It's going to cost 400 quid, but it's going to provide me with fun, it's going to provide some content for the video, so I'm going to do it. When we get the car map, we're obviously going to get a brake horsepower reading before and after, and also for torque. Get a real world reading, we're going to need to do a 0 to 60 time before and after. That's what we're here to do now. Obviously on a private road, let's get that done. I'm not massively happy about doing this. As I say, I had the gearbox rebuilt when I first bought the car. Since then I haven't treated it too badly, never really launched the car, which I'm about to do now, probably for the first time really. But in the interest of YouTube and having some results of a 0 to 60 time before and after the map, it's got to be done.
Too fast, too fast for y'all, man. Too fast.
Just got back from recording the 0 to 60 times. Not gonna lie, that was good fun. I did 2 runs. The first run I got 7 seconds just to warm up. The second run I got 5 seconds, which is a quite incredible time because I think the standard time on that car is 5.5 seconds. Obviously the car is 120,000 miles and 18 years old, so you'd have thought some horsepower had been lost in that time. Those 0 to 60 times been playing on my mind a bit. The fact they were 7.0 dead and 5.0 dead just didn't seem right when the app's telling me that it will do it to the millisecond. So that app I was using was Fast R. I've gone and downloaded a different one called Race Timer. I've gone out and done a couple more times. I've got a 6.8 and a 6.4, which seem a bit more in line with what I was expecting. So we're going to go with those as the before mapping comparative. There's probably room there to improve the time, but I'm slightly nervous of damaging the car. I'm revving it up to about 3,000 revs before setting off. Partly I'm only doing 3,000 revs to try to not break the car, but partly I'm not going higher because the wheels are just going to spin, which isn't going to get me a good time. So I kind of felt 3,000 revs was about right, but I could be wrong. I'm not a race driver. So next I've got to get some iridium spark plugs for the mapping place will accept the car. A bit annoying is obviously we've just done the service on the car and I replaced it with platinum plugs. We want to get to the point of having the car mapped and seeing what that 0 to 60 time is, but unfortunately I had another issue with the car getting into limp mode and a lack of boost. I was on the way home from work the other day, the car went into limp mode again and had no boost. So I cleared the code and almost immediately the same thing happened, and that repeated 4 or 5 times before it was then fine for the rest of the journey. So because it's so intermittent, and when it does happen, for a period of time it's not intermittent, it's making me think it might be a solenoid sticking. So what I need to do is get under the car, observe for any splits in the vacuum piping, just to rule that out. But in the last video on the Astra I have looked at that already, which again is what leads me to think it might be a solenoid electrical issue, possibly still be sensor. But there is something else that I can try to eliminate a whole part of the system. So there's a thing people do on this car which they call BCS delete, and the BCS is the boost control box, which we looked at in the previous video when I did the starter motor. Put a clip on screen of that now. So this vacuum pipe here goes from the recirculation valve on the turbo and runs round under the airbox, round the airbox then the back of the MAF here, and goes down into the boost control box. What I understand the purpose of that is in first and second gear it restricts the boost slightly to give a smoother drive. So what people do is they bypass all of that to get more boost in first and second gear. I've watched a few videos where people have done this, no one's reported any issues, although they have acknowledged there's controversy over the modification. So I'm thinking I might give this a go, which then eliminates a whole load of vacuum pipes and reduces the risk of a split in those. It eliminates one of the solenoids at the back of the engine, and as well the boost control box. Right, I'm resolved, I'm going to do it. If I'm going to do it, I need to do it before the mapping, because any changes I make after the mapping might make the map not quite as efficient as it could have been. It costs a lot of money, so I want to make sure I've done everything that I'm going to do before the mapping. I've also got to do the spark plug still, and whilst I do that I'm going to do the cam cover gasket, because that is leaking a lot of oil. As we know on this channel, I love cam cover gaskets. Here I go, rerouting the vacuum piping to simplify the vacuum pipes, bypass the solenoid at the back of the engine and the BCS boost controller box, which will give me more boost in first and second, and hopefully fixed the limp mode and the boost issue I'm having. Just getting the crossover pipe out of the way to give me more access to the vacuum pipes down the back here, and also down here. The pipe down here doesn't actually need to be changed. The plastic bit that goes all the way around under the airbox to here can just remain there. I think it's plastic, so less prone to failing. I know some people do just run the new vacuum hose from there over the top of the engine under here, but I'm just going to keep this plastic on. The pipe I ordered is too small to replace that pipe. The pipe I've got is 3mm internal diameter, which really needs to at least be 4. So what I've done back here is pulled out the plastic pipe from this rubber T-piece, and that bit goes into the throttle body. The other bit which is relevant to us is this bit that goes into the fuel pressure regulator, so that still needs to be connected. So basically I need this bit of pipe, which is the one that goes round to the turbo under the airbox, to feed into the pressure regulator pipe, and the one that goes into the throttle body. So then the pipe down here that goes to the BCS box and the solenoid valve at the back of the engine becomes redundant. So I just need to change this T-piece round so I can join the 3 together. Pulled off the existing T-piece from the top of the back of the engine, as we were just looking at. So there's a few cracks starting. I'll replace these bits of rubber with a 3mm pipe that I've got. I've also got a new T-piece, so I might as well use that. Put a blue pipe on one end of the T-piece, which I'm going to connect to the plastic pipe there that goes into the throttle body. I'm then going to cut a length of blue pipe to go from the T-piece here to the fuel pressure regulator there, and then that bit of rubber from the plastic vacuum pipe that runs to the turbo solenoid will go straight into the T-piece there. And there you go, simple as that. You do have to leave the solenoid at the back of the engine plugged in, otherwise you're going to get an engine management light on. Just started it up. No lights on the dash so far, let's take it for a drive. Right, let's pull away now in first and second. That's where there should be a difference, if there is any. Feels good. Whether or not it feels different or better than before, I don't know, but that's not the main reason that I've done this. It was to eliminate some of the vacuum piping and the solenoid valve at the back of the engine, in the hope that fixes my limp problem. We'll just have to drive it for a few more weeks and hopefully it doesn't come back, but it's so intermittent. It's now been 3 weeks and I've only had the limp issue happen on one occasion. Well, it happened a few times on that one occasion, but only on one occasion. Okay, we're going to go again. I mean, it's good, but it's always been good. To be honest, I can't really tell a difference, but I'm okay with that. cold one today, but we've got to get this car ready for mapping. So we're going to get it in the garage, we can do the spark plugs, and while we're at it, we're also going to have a go at changing the cam cover gasket, because that is clearly seeping. Take a look. Cleaned this up in the previous video on the Astra, which wasn't that long ago, and this is the state of it. You've seen me do spark plugs before. Quick recap. So take the air intake pipes off, take the VXR cover off, TT30s, coil pack up, spark plugs out. Let's fast forward to having the coil pack out. Good news is that these aren't soaked in oil, which means the cam cover gasket isn't leaking into the spark plug holes, which is a common problem with these cam cover gaskets as well. Although it would matter too much if it was, because we'd be replacing it and addressing that problem anyway. To get the cam cover off, there's bolts, 10 of them across the top there. We need to get this top bit of the cam belt cover off, because that hooks over the top of the cam cover here. To undo that pipe, and I think that's it. So to get the cam belt cover off, I'm going to take the airbox out, and then there's 2 E-Torx bolts down the bottom there. So we have the cam cover off, by using the camshafts of the VXR. Anyway, let's get this cleaned up, just as we've done on the BMW many times, to replace this gasket. There are also these O-rings here for the bolt holes, but annoyingly I haven't been provided with those with this gasket. Oil wasn't leaking through them, I don't have them, so we're just going to have to go with it. See me do the cam cover gasket on the E90, you'll know that I had to go quite heavy on the RTV sealant around the edge of the top of the engine where the cam cover sits, just to get it to seal, because so many times I'd fitted it and it didn't seal. Anyway, I'm more familiar with these engines, having previously worked at a Vauxhall dealer. What we always used to do was put a bit of RTV sealant on this corner, this corner, this corner, this corner, and that used to do the trick. Obviously I had it, as you saw earlier, leaking all along down there, as it's covered in oil at the top of the head there. So I do have an inclination to go heavy again with the RTV across the top there. So I think I'll do the usual places and across the top there, and maybe also these corners as well. I've also checked with not having these O-rings for the bolt holes here, that these haven't gone hard and brittle, which is common. I mentioned earlier in the video about the work done on the valve stem oil seals. So the cam cover was off last year, and I'm hoping that the garage who did that work did replace these O-rings, and as I say, they don't feel brittle, so I think they should be okay. Now for the job that we came here to do, the spark plugs. These are the ones. The garage is going to do the mapping, has asked us to fit these. These withstand higher temperatures and are stronger. So I don't know what he's planning on doing to the car, but he's asked us to do them. I've seen other videos where guys have had cars mapped and it's burnt off the tip of the spark plug. So obviously we don't want that to happen. This is what I mean by the tip of the spark plug. We don't want that melting away. If that's already melted away, then something's probably gone catastrophically wrong before we got to that point. Either way, we want to make sure we've got the right plugs to deal with the mapping. There we go. Let's get it mapped. There's Cam. Finally getting the Astra mapped. Here we are, Osmo Performance. We can leave the car with Craig, see what we can do.
I want bad stuff, really bad stuff. I like it when it's fun, it makes me feel tough. I like bad stuff, I just can't get enough. 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 Good stuff or bad stuff. I want bad stuff, really bad stuff. Woo! I want bad stuff.
Here we go, we're back in the Astra, it's mapped. Let's give it some. So on the screen now we've got the results from the dyno runs. On this line here you can see the horsepower from the first run before the mapping was done, and the result of that was 232 horsepower. So standard this car should be running 240, but given how old it is and how many miles it's done, a drop of 8 horsepower isn't too bad. But here you see the after mapping result, and we're getting an extra 25 horsepower to take it to 257. And I have noticed a real difference in the performance. I've done a 50-mile round trip to work the other day, and when you put your foot down to overtake cars, it's like a new beast. Now we're going to run some new 0 to 60 times and compare it to the times that we did earlier before the mapping. Let's go. Results are in and it's a good one. Here we go on screen now. 6.2. Before we had a 6.8 and a 6.4. So taking the 6.4 as the previous best, we've gained 0.2 of a second. I think that's a pretty decent result. Justifies doing the map, shows the increase in power. We've not had any sign of the engine management light coming on since the mapping, which was the main purpose of getting the map done because of the sports cat. So good news all round. So there you go, that was my journey on getting my Astra mapped. Hope you enjoyed it, thanks for watching and see you later.